Hello. Today on Ill-Informed Opinions, we're doing Secret Rulers, the Illuminati. That's supposed to be a little owl. It's not a very good owl, but I'm not a very good artist. Unlike me, I'm in my wife's studio, and she is in fact an excellent artist. Some of the stuff back here you see is hers. So, I'm sure she's horribly embarrassed by her studio. I don't know why, but I'm going to hear about it. So, let's talk about the Illuminati. The first thing, this is the actual symbol of the Illuminati, not the eye in the pyramid. The eye in the pyramid is a symbol of Masonry, of Freemasonry, a similar secret society, and one which the Illuminati wanted to be part of and tried to be part of and then tried to take over and then failed miserably. And the owl is the symbol of Minerva, or Athena in Greek, but they like the Roman goddess Minerva, so they adopted it. So let's do some basic information. Like a lot of ancient secret societies, most of the stuff was invented right as it was getting founded or later on. In fact, there was a conflict in the Illuminati over one of the rites that was used to elevate someone from one level to another. And the problem was one person had written the rite, the other person had proclaimed it ancient. The person who proclaimed it ancient was Adam Weishaupt, and we'll talk about him more. And therefore, this ancient rite dated to a couple years after the founding of the Illuminati. And since it was ancient, they couldn't really change it, which is a problem because everybody thought it was just overall too much. And this is one of the fun things about secret societies, is that they are relatively small, and like college academic departments, they fight over literally everything, especially things that don't matter. And they tear themselves apart constantly. This is one of the reasons why secret societies tend not to last very long, is that they get into the petty weeds so easily. And the Illuminati was very, very much something along these lines. The Illuminati basically, I'm going to turn on commenting, if I can, and is that how I do it? Nope, that's not how I do it. Oh, anyways, the Illuminati were basically a wannabe secret society, and they were very good at being wannabes. They weren't very good at being what they proposed to be, and this has to do with the founding. Adam Weishaupt was at the University of Ingolstadt in Bavaria. The University of Ingolstadt, like many fine learning institutions to this day, was Jesuit run. The Jesuits, who I think I should devote an entire video to, if not two, loved education. As Ignatius Loyola pointed out, give me the child and you can have the man. And they did that a lot. Their growing influence caused them to be disbanded in 1773. But the Jesuits stayed on at Ingolstadt, even though they weren't officially Jesuits anymore, because there were no Jesuits anymore. And to answer any potential questions, the Jesuits were definitely reinstated, and the current Pope, quite famously, is a Jesuit. The largest order of the Catholic Church is the Jesuit order, and there's a lot of reasons for that, not least of which their emphasis on education and science and reason. But again, I'll go into that in the Jesuit thing. Weishaupt was a professor there, and he was one of the only lay professors at this university. And he wasn't treated well by the staff or the other faculty. So he decided to say, screw it, he's going to start his own university with hookers and booze and gambling. And he did. Except it was a secret order. It was the Illuminati. And they drew a little picture, and it had a little bird sitting on something. It was so special. So he and like 4 other people decided this was going to be great. So they started out and they gave each other names. Weishaupt's name was Spartacus, and he founded this in 1776. This is where a lot of fun comes in, because a lot of the conspiracy theories say that the United States was founded by or influenced by the Illuminati. That's incredibly false. However, there are some fun parallel dates here, which 1776 being a big one, 1781 being another big one, and for both the United States and the Illuminati. In the United States, it was some of the last battles of the Revolutionary War, even though the war wouldn't end officially until 1783. And then the Illuminati was disbanded in 1787, which is when the Constitution was written and ratified. And that's the start of our democracy, or a republic. We had a confederacy prior to that. So there's kind of a fun parallel. There's also the fun parallel that Adam Weishaupt looks a lot like George Washington. This is a coincidence. Both of them are Central/Northern European white men who were ridiculously rich. Weishaupt much less so than Washington. Washington was actually probably the richest person in the colonies when he became president. So they wore a lot of the same styles, because men's styles, except for the macaronis, who were also running around at this time, the men's styles tend to be fairly conservative, and the men tend to be interchangeable, at least from the 1750s on. So, I mean, look at business suits. I mean, there's no deviation from the uniform, or at least there's not supposed to be. And there's a long history about why it actually is that way, and it does have, in fact, to do with military uniforms. But that's neither here nor there. So, Adam Weishaupt looks similar to George Washington, especially in small prints. That's because he did it kind of, rich white guy with a flat face and a mediocre to good wig, although we would consider it a bad one. Of course he looks like that. So, one of the popular conspiracy theories is Washington died during the Revolutionary War and Weishaupt came over to rule as president. That's not true at all. Or he died right before the Constitution was ratified. Weishaupt came over to rule as president. Again, not true at all. There's literally no evidence for this except for vague look. So Weishaupt decided to start his own illuminated order, as he calls it, his own secret society with 4 students. And they banned, it was Jesuits, of course, because Weishaupt didn't want any of the people who had been mean to him there. They banned Jews because, of course, they did. It's Germany, and Weishaupt is Protestant, so they banned pagans. By pagans, they meant anybody who wasn't Jewish or Christian, which would include Jews, Hindus, Zoroastrians, and Buddhists, well, none of which are pagans in a technical sense, and pretty much anybody who didn't look like them or act like them, or, God forbid, was a woman. So, no women in that society. That banning of women was not unusual in secret societies. The Masons only allowed women recently, in the last 50 years or something like this. Anyways, they had sister orders, but it doesn't count. The Knights of Columbus, which is the Catholic Church's answer to the Masons. Because, fun fact, you can't be a Mason or a member of the Illuminati if you're Catholic. Which, damn it, there goes my plans. I think doesn't even have women members, but I could be wrong on that. You should. Anyways, they like to get drunk too. So, this order was devoted to rationality, to secular government, to democracy. Funnily enough, a representative democracy, obviously not true democracy, because true democracy is a nightmare. And even Adam Weishaupt knew better. Funnily enough, these are the same principles the Jesuits were pushing and to this day push. But, you know, they aren't Jesuits. They're aggressively not Jesuits, no matter how much they look like it. And so he decided he'd start cozying up to the Masons when they realized they had a recruitment problem, because everybody they were trying to recruit were rich idiots. And that's not a criticism. They were trying to get people who would do what he said and the other elites said, and follow orders and donate money to the cause. So Weishaupt found and encouraged a bunch of rich idiots. The problem with rich idiots is they're idiots. And having a bunch of toffs running around acting like complete dumbasses doesn't really lend much credence to your secret society, especially one which is based on the concept of reason and rationality. Never mind that reason and rationality are tools and not actual like goals. I mean, they're the journey, not the destination. So Weishaupt decided he was going to copy the Masons. And he decided to copy the Masons. He gave degrees like the Masons did, and then he decided to, say, join the Masons, and maybe he could poach some Masons into his secret Illuminati society, which would be part of the Masons, but, you know, like kind of under wraps. Well, I'm not going to go into the Masons. That's probably another video. But so they adopted a bunch of the Masonic symbols and a bunch of Masonic elements, which is where we get the eye in the pyramid sort of thing, because that's a very Masonic sign. So with that, Weishaupt decides, hey, we're kind of quasi-Masons, and we can kind of infiltrate them, and we can use the Masonry, which has already extensively infiltrated large chunks of Germany, to infiltrate Bavaria, which is where they were. And we're going to get credence from the Masons. So they petition to get credence from the Masons. They get recognized to some extent. They petition to be recognized by the British, because Bavaria is going back and forth between being liberal and conservative, and Weishaupt wants it to be more liberal. So they get some backing from a lot of, again, rich idiots, because, hey, who else is going to join Masons or Illuminati? And the Masons ended up putting a lot of people in the proper positions, hence, which is what Masons do, you know, or any decent organizations. You promote your friends, right? Well, you get a Mason in a high enough position in a monarchy like the Bavarian government, you can promote them up that rank. Same thing with the English monarchy, which is why they tried to attach themselves to the York contingent of the Masons in Britain. And they failed miserably in that content. I mean, that endeavor. And that ended up spelling their doom, because Bavaria, right, this whole Mason thing takes place around 1781. The time of the American Revolution was kind of winding down. The big battles have been fought, etc., etc. But they start infiltrating. At their peak, they said they had 2,500 members. The real number is likely about 650. Most of these people have been poached from the Masons or were currently Masons. So they got Illuminati positioned in, or rather, people they said were Illuminati, whether or not they were is a whole different matter, in positions of power throughout the Bavarian government. And then the ruler of Bavaria said, screw that, I don't like this. So he banned all secret societies. Not because of the Illuminati, they were just one amongst many, but because he didn't want to deal with the Masons, the Rosicrucians, who the Bavarian Illuminati had fought over religious issues, the Illuminati, and like a dozen more of these nutty groups. And the thing is, they had to leave. Weishaupt fled. and lost all his power. In 1787 was the end of the Masons. The entire experiment lasted 11 years. A lot of nonsense occurred, which had no relation to anything. They were literally fighting over colors for different outfits. They were fighting over names of what to call things. Their grand ideals of rationalism and republicanism, they were being adopted, kind of, but they didn't actually, pan out to anything. I mean, the thing was over right around the time the French Revolution was starting, right around the time the Constitution was being written. One of those things ended up not killing tens of thousands of their own citizens in a spate of blood, thirsty murder, and starting a global war. But, which is left as an exercise to the reader. So, ultimately, it amounted to nothing. It really did. Now, why do we have this? Because a secret society which crops up around about this time and is associated with some of the principles of the American Revolution and the French Revolution ends up becoming interesting to a lot of people. And there's not much documentation on them, well, except that there is. But most of the documentation is nitty-gritty junk, because that's all they really cared about ultimately. I mean, again, they had lofty ideals, but they didn't do squat with them, except a bunch of infighting and fighting other groups. So this opens it up to be a blank slate. You could throw a bunch of other things, like the New World Order, which was a Masonic idea that, yet again, the Illuminati borrowed. As I pointed out before, Novus Ordo Seclorum appears on the dollar bill and the Great Seal of the United States, because it is a Masonic ideal, and the United States was founded by Masons. And the Illuminati kind of look like Masons if you squint, because they associate themselves with Masons in a failed attempt to take them over. And maybe, and that says, screams Illuminati to people, except of course the fact that they collapsed utterly. The thing is, there's no evidence that they lasted any longer, and there's no reason to believe they would. Anything the Illuminati brought to the table, the Masons already had. Okay? Anything they brought to the table, the Jesuits, who were themselves kind of oppressed and under suspicion for being Jesuits, already had. So the Enlightenment ideals that the Illuminati represented were just kind of already there in a bunch of other places. It was kind of an also-ran group that that tried to be influential and wasn't. So since then, we got a lot of mess about the U.S. and other nations, or the UN being part of the New World Order. And as I said before, the New World Order is a society of a representative democracy and secularized government, which, let's face it, is what the U.S. and a bunch of other countries achieved. So if you don't like the Constitution, you don't like the New World Order. If you do like the Constitution, you do like the New World Order, because the Constitution enshrines the principles of the Novus Ordo Seclorum. Much more so than the Illuminati ever could. They never left Bavaria, despite trying to get recognized elsewhere. And like I said, the peak was about between 2,500 and 650. Reputable numbers put it much lower, or a much lower number at 650. And that was only for a very short time. So that's the story of the Bavarian Illuminati. They just kind of were wannabes. That's it. And they had a bunch of a bunch of idiots prancing about, thinking that they were going to change the world, and they didn't. Not in the slightest. I'm Joseph Cadotte. You can find my books online under my name, Job herself is my most recent novel. It's a revenge fantasy about an asteroid princess, so I have a space opera, and then I also have a espionage romance called In the Land of Nod, a couple collections of anthologies where a bunch of people wrote stories and I edited it, and my wife, whose office I'm in, has a bunch of coloring books. In the Coloring Nature series, I recommend them because I'd be shot if I wouldn't, but they're highly good and they're very educational. I think I have one. Not there. Of course, I can't show you one, despite the fact that I'm in her office, because I don't know where she keeps them. No. Anyways, as always, feel free to comment and ask questions, request anything. If you request something, I promise I'll talk about it because no one has requested anything yet. And sure, why not? So, and I'll talk to you guys next week. Good day.